There we go. Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending where you are watching from. It's still morning for me, but depending where you are around the world joining us, you're here for our live launch coverage of GPS-3 with the fifth vehicle in that new kind of constellation being launched from SpaceX at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station this morning. We're expecting SpaceX to go live here in probably the next about 5 or 10 minutes or so. Going to be a bit longer of a stream here. Deployment isn't until T plus about an hour and a half. So we'll be live answering your questions. So make sure, as always, you can send those in the chat using the hashtag AskTLP. If you're new here at the Launchpad, we cover everything space, space flight, space engineering, and the future of space and STEM. I'm thrilled that you are here. A couple ways that you can get involved. In the description below, you're going to see a link to our Discord. That's free, open to the public. Come on over and join us in the conversation. We're hanging out in the live comms this morning and chatting it up in there. Also, if you want to support the channel, you can use Super Chat, Super Stickers, or the best way is to join our Patreon. That way you get some perks as well. We've got discounts for our shop. We've got exclusive Discord tiers and a bunch more in there. Also, if you're interested in following along with everything space news, follow us over on Twitter at TLPN_official. That's where we're live tweeting. But as we get started, let us know in the chat where you're watching from. Were you with us yesterday? Yesterday was a triple stream day as we had the first deployment, not rollout, it was supposed to be, but first deployment of our installation of IROSA on the International Space Station, the first upgrades to any solar array in over 20 years. Then we saw China launch its crew, and through the night, I believe they've had their rendezvous and docking, still waiting to get that. And then we were live with the landing pad as usual. So it was a busy Wednesday. We're back for today. We'll have some flash updates coming for you in the next couple of days about some other stuff that has happened in space. And it looks like SpaceX has gone live. So we're going to pull that up here, streaming in their beautiful 4K. So much nicer than some of the 720p streams we've had for the last few, but we're excited to have that back. And we'll just turn their stream on here so you guys can see it. There we go. But we'll leave them in the bottom corner for now, waiting for them to get started. But let us know in the chat where you're watching from. If you have any questions, if you're in the Discord, jump on over into live comms. I am hanging out in there, and you can join the conversation in live hangout or on live comms if you'd rather not chat. Hello from South Africa. Hey, Suzette, good to see you. Orange Guy, WTX, good to see you as well. Now, SpaceX generally goes live with about 13 minutes before T0, which means things are progressing well in their count. This morning, today, they're going to be launching from Slick 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station on, of course, a Falcon 9 Block 5. Today's booster is B1062-2. Quite a long turnaround. It's a 224-day turnaround, but I believe this is the first time a U.S. Space Force mission is being launched on, they said, a reusable booster, or at least this type of booster. So interesting to see there. The satellite's going into a medium Earth orbit, so it's going into 20,180 kilometers by 20,180 kilometers, so very large orbit. It is way out there. The booster is going to attempt to land 647 kilometers downrange on Just Read the Instructions, which is now the only drone ship for the Cape and Kennedy region. Of course, I Still Love You is on a large ship on its way to the West Coast for launches from Vandenberg starting next month. Have a flash news update coming about what launches we're expecting to see there and why they're moving, of course, I Still Love You rather than just sending their new drone ship, a shortfall of Gravitas. The tugboat is flag out with the support vessel Go Quest. The fairings are new for this mission, but this is also going to be the first time they've ever used their new temporary SpaceX fleet vessel, Haas Briarwood, which if you haven't seen it, go on Twitter, type just Haas Briarwood in. This is a massive ship. They are not keeping this ship. The ship almost looks like you could just land a Falcon on it if you could just narrow down that target just a little more. For it, it's going to be the 122nd Falcon 9 launch. 63rd flight of a proven booster, 67th flight of a reflown booster, and it is the 73rd flight from Slick 40, so almost at that 75 number. and it is already the 53rd orbital launch of 2021, which is crazy. They're just racking them up there for it. Let's see who else we've got in here. We got G from Mexico. Good to see you. We've got Yasir from Venezuela. Good morning. Hello. Orange Guy times 2. Sounds good. But if you have questions, it can be about today's launch, about what we were doing yesterday, anything space, drop those in the chat. We'll answer a few now. Once SpaceX starts, we will, of course, listen into that pretty exclusively. But during the coast phase, which if you're just joining us, it's going to be a little bit longer of a coast phase. It's about an hour and a half to deployment. But we do have that second burn, which the second burn is longer today. It's about 45 seconds. To finalize that orbit. So we're going to have a fair amount of coast time. We'll do a replay of the launch, answer your questions as always. If you're new, make sure you've hit that like button and subscribe. If you're watching over on Facebook, come on over, join us on YouTube. That is where you can always catch all of our videos. We always go live on Facebook for launches, but we do a bunch of other stuff that you might not want to miss out over on YouTube. So join us over there. The link is in the chat for you guys. We got Mario from Puerto Rico. Hello, welcome. Good to see you. Share out the broadcast. Let people know that we are about, where are we at? We're about 15 minutes away from liftoff, so we should be expecting SpaceX to start up here in any moment. Just double check that. Yeah, they're progressing in their count. And weather was looking decent the last time I was looking at it. Didn't seem like they were all too worried about today's launch. If any of you are down in the area, let us know. Let us know if you're looking up and outside and if you're going to see this launch. But it's quite a large satellite that will be launching. This satellite is going to be replacing a GPS satellite that was launched from Cape Canaveral on November 6, 2004 on a Delta II rocket. That is the one that it is replacing. Let us listen in to SpaceX as they give us an update on the weather and the status of the booster. Keep those questions coming in. You're watching our live launch coverage of GPS-3, vehicle number 5, launching from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station.
3, 2, 1.
Good afternoon. It's Thursday, June 17th, and on your screen is a live Falcon 9 as it awaits its 12:09 p.m. Eastern Time launch from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. My name is Yomezo, and I'm a propulsion engineer here at SpaceX. Welcome to our webcast coverage for GPS-3 Space Vehicle 5 for the Space Force, SpaceX's 19th launch this year. GPS, originally developed by the U.S. Air Force and formerly known as the Global Positioning System, is a constellation of orbiting satellites that provide precise position, navigation, and timing data to military and civilian users globally. The U.S. Space Force continues to provide this free service to more than 4 billion users worldwide. For many of today's viewers, GPS services aren't new. If you're like me and have ever used your phone's mapping service or retrieved coordinates for a location via a pin drop, then you've received information from a satellite within this system. Collectively, with the system's already operational satellites, the payload today will further the U.S. Space Force's ability to provide mission-critical global access, persistence, and awareness for our national security. Before we dive deeper into learning more about the GPS satellite and its capabilities, let's take a closer look at the vehicle on your screen. Falcon 9, our two-stage liquid-fueled launch vehicle, is in position at Space Launch Complex 40. Now, while the booster supporting today's mission is flying for the second time, today marks the first time that SpaceX is supporting a U.S. Space Force mission with a reused booster. And to top it off, this particular booster debuted right here on Slick 40 for last year's GPS-3 Space Vehicle 4 mission. Now, if you're new to our webcast or are unfamiliar with the Falcon 9, what you see at the bottom two-thirds of the vehicle are soot markings from its previous flight. These markings are located on what we call the first stage. The first stage's primary role, with the help of its 9 Merlin engines, is to accelerate the vehicle all the way to the edge of space, where it will then drop off the second stage carrying the payload. Following its drop-off of the second stage, the first stage will make its way back to Earth, where we'll attempt to recover it on our autonomous drone ship. Just read the instructions, which you can see there. Now, if you turn your attention to the section above the first stage and the black carbon fiber inner stage, you'll see the Falcon 9's second stage. About 2.5 minutes into flight, the first and second stage will separate, and the second stage will ignite its single MVAC engine to carry the GPS satellite to a highly elliptical orbit. Separation from second stage will then occur, and then the satellite will perform burns. Finally, above this stage, placed at the very top of the vehicle, you'll see this nose cone structure called a fairing. Inside that structure is where the GPS-3 satellite is currently sitting. The two fairing halves are safely encapsulating the satellite to protect it from aerodynamic heating, loads, and contamination during ascent. The fairing halves we are using today are new, and we'll recover them using our chartered recovery ship, HOS Briarwood. Once the fairing reaches the vacuum of space, we will jettison the fairing halves as the second stage continues on its journey to orbit.
Good morning from SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. I'm John Innsbrucker, Falcon Principal Integration Engineer. The launch vehicle and satellite vehicle teams are ready for launch as we approach T-minus 10 minutes, 45 seconds to liftoff. This is our fourth GPS launch, and all four have been from Space Launch Complex 40. Now, earlier today, the satellite team performed functional checkouts of the GPS satellite, and the satellite went on internal battery power at T-minus 15 minutes. The Falcon 9 team began their final checks at T-minus 2 hours, and most recently, we completed the pull to proceed with propellant load and launch. This was at T-minus 38 minutes, and all parties were go. Now, the team at Cape Canaveral began loading propellant on time at T-minus 35 minutes. Falcon 9 is a bipropellant vehicle. That means it uses two propellants, a fuel and an oxidizer. For Falcon 9, our fuel is a refined form of kerosene known as RP1. Now, to burn the fuel, we need an oxidizer. Now, most burning on Earth uses oxygen, which makes up about 21% of the air you breathe. However, in space, there's no atmosphere to provide oxygen or other oxygen-bearing molecules, so the rocket needs to carry its own oxidizer to space. And in our case, our oxidizer is super chill liquid oxygen, referred to as densified LOX. The liquid oxygen is chilled well below its boiling point, and that increases its density, which allows us to load more into the first and second stage LOX tanks. Now, currently, fuel loading is complete on the second stage. Fuel loading is continuing on the first stage for another few minutes and will wrap up at T-minus 6 minutes. The liquid oxygen loading is continuing on both the first and second stages, and you can see the gaseous vapor coming off of both tanks as that ultra-cold liquid oxygen contacts the skin of the vehicles and the floor to air. Now, in addition to its propellants, Falcon 9 also needs an ignition source to start burning the fuel and oxidizer. And for that, we use the chemical T-tub that stands for triethyl aluminum and triethyl borane. Now, when it's fully fueled, Falcon 9 first and second stages combine to carry over 1.1 million pounds of propellant. And we're going to burn through most of that over the 8.5 minutes it takes to land the first stage and get the second stage into its initial orbit. Now, once our Merlin engines begin to burn RP1 kerosene and the liquid oxygen, you're going to see the rocket throwing that combustion exhaust out of the engine nozzles in one direction, and that results in a push on the rocket in the opposite direction. And this is a great example of Newton's third law of motion. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. On the weather front, at T-minus 1 hour, we were down to just 10% probability of violating launch weather requirements. The only thing we've been looking at is upper altitude wind shear. That looks good right now, so we expect we're going to be good for the last 7.5 minutes of the countdown. Weather conditions are also looking good for the booster landing on our drone ship and for the fairing recovery. So with that, the launch vehicle, satellite, the weather, the range are all good to go for a 12:09 p.m. Eastern liftoff from Space Launch Complex 40.
As we mentioned earlier, today's GPS-3 Space Vehicle 5 mission is for the U.S. Space Force. This mission will be SpaceX's fourth overall GPS-3 mission. 2 missions were successfully launched in 2020 and 1 in 2018. And following today's launch, we are planning our 5th mission for sometime next year. To date, these next-generation satellites provide increased signal accuracy and reliability to operate even if confronted by cyber adversaries. Not only does GPS-3 help with national security, it also enables all facets of our daily lives. To learn more about the constellation, take a look at this video by the Space and Missile Systems Center, which provides critical national security space capabilities to the U.S. Space Force.
So we will keep their video on screen here, but they've sometimes been using music that they don't want us to be using. So we'll keep it on. If you want to listen in, you can definitely scroll back on their stream following this and listen in. It's just some energetic music that you're missing. There's no talking in this one, just about what the satellite does and how it actually is so critical to our everyday lives. If you're just joining us, welcome back to... They just finished closing out one of the fuelings. If you're just joining us, welcome back here to the launch pad. Here at the pad, we cover everything space, space flight, space engineering, the future of space, and STEM. And you're watching our live launch coverage of GPS-3, launching the 5th vehicle into their new constellation, replacing a satellite that was launched back in 2006 on a Delta II. Let us know in the chat where you're watching from. If you have any questions, we're coming up on that T-minus 5 minutes, 30 seconds mark. And what we're going to be going through over the next few minutes is the following. They're going to be closing out their fueling. We're going to see a large strong back retract. And then about T-minus 1 minute, we're going to see a large purge of all their lines. We'll see a large increasing in the venting. That's clearing all the hosing to make sure that the pad is safe for launch. At startup, obviously engine ignition, and then they will go for liftoff. Then following through that, we will see max Q, which is when the vehicle is reaching its maximum aerodynamic pressure, followed by main engine cutoff, stage separation, and second stage ignition. Then a short time later, we'll be waiting for an entry burn and then hopefully a successful landing burn. Today's landing will coincide the same time as the second stage first shutoff. And then we will be in a coast phase. Deployment's expected about an hour and a half after liftoff. We'll, of course, be live that whole time.
4 minutes, 35 seconds. Everything continues to be go for launch. We've had a quiet countdown throughout the morning. Now on your screen, you see the large structure next to Falcon 9. That's the strong back. At any moment, the strong back will begin opening the 2 clamps around the second stage. You can kind of see them obscured a little bit with the LOX vapor. The strong back retract sequence has begun. Now, once the clamp arms are open, the strong back will retract away from the rocket slightly, just under 2 degrees. And then as the Falcon 9 lifts off, the hydraulic arms will pull the strong back farther away. Get a little bit of a view as the arms come open. Next up now is the strong back will begin to recline away from the Falcon 9. There's not much motion, but you can see we're getting a little bit of gap opened up between the strong back and the Falcon 9. Now the strong back is part of the transport erector. That's called the TE. The transport erector is used to roll out Falcon 9 to the launch pad, raises it to the vertical launch position, also routes power, fluids, and communication to both the rocket and the satellite. The TE includes both the launch mount that the first stage is clamped to right now, and the strong back, which is hinged to the launch mount. Next major event coming up at T-minus 3 minutes is closeout of liquid oxygen loading on the first stage.
Stage 1 pogo bleed.
We're closing out liquid oxygen loading on the first stage. Falcon 9 and GPS teams are continuing to track no issues for launch. The weather continues to look good. The range is ready to support. Now, the SpaceX team is monitoring completion of LOX loading on stage 2. That's due to finish up at about T-minus 2 minutes. And as a reminder, if we have to call a hold on today's launch, We have a backup opportunity tomorrow with a liftoff time of 12:05 p.m. Eastern.
Stage 2 LOX load closed out.
And we've got confirmation. Stage 2 LOX loading is complete. And that completes loading of the over 1.1 million pounds of propellants on the Falcon 9. All systems remain go for launch. Right now, we are beginning to drain the propellant out of the lines that go up the strongback to the second stage. And that's creating the large white cloud you see around the strongback. Pressure from that ultra-cold LOX line is vented overboard, and it meets up with the warm, moist Florida air. Now our next event will be startup called out at T-minus 1 minute. At that point, the first and second stage computers on Falcon 9 are executing stored programs to prepare the rocket for flight, leading to ignition of the Merlin engines at T-minus 2 seconds and liftoff at T0.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
Falcon computers are running the final sequence for launch. We're also pressurizing first and second stage tanks for liftoff pressure.
Here we go. Looks like a nice clear day. We should have some good
DMD
views.
is go for launch.
We are go for launch.
We've heard the call out. The Space Force mission director is go for launch. T-minus 33 seconds and counting. All systems go for launch.
T-minus 30 seconds.
Let's listen into terminal count and watch as Falcon 9 transports the U.S. Space Force's GPS-3 Space Vehicle number 5 satellite into orbit.
T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. And liftoff. Go Falcon, go GPS.
Nice, beautiful, clear day.
Vehicle is pitching downrange.
Stage 1 chamber pressures are nominal.
T plus 36 seconds. SpaceX launch engineers report nominal conditions on Falcon 9. We begin the trip to space carrying the GPS-3 satellite. Merlin engines about to throttle down. We're in the throttle bucket.
Telemetry.
Decreasing acceleration of preparation for maximum dynamic pressure. Great views looking aft towards Cape Canaveral.
Vehicle is supersonic.
We're throttled back up to full power.
Hey, we can see that view again. They've made it just in time.
Supersonic.
Just in time, we can see them going that supersonic again there. The little puff of cloud at the end. And there's that trail. They're getting really good about their streaming.
Even though velocity is rapidly increasing, the atmospheric density is decreasing. That's resulting on less loads on the Falcon 9. And you've heard the call out. We're through max Q, so the loads are now decreasing on the launch vehicle.
MVAC engine chill has started.
That call out says the bleed valve on second stage engine is open. And that's beginning a final chill of the MVAC engine prior to second stage ignition. All's looking good with the stage 1 trajectory. And we've got 3 events coming up in quick succession. We're going to have main engine cutoff, MECO as we call it. The first and second stages will then separate. And then we will have ignition of the second stage engine to propel Falcon 9 into the first parking orbit.
Not a lot of cloud stage, just some kind of light wispy ones. That's why they still have a pretty decent view here. You have to remember, it's now 55 kilometers up.
Throttle down the first stage engines
and
to hold
quite a range
4G
down.
constant acceleration coming up on main engine cutoff.
So we'll see MECO,
MECO.
separation, and then ignition.
Stage separation confirmed.
There we go.
And we've got, as you can hear the cheering in the background, successful stage separation. Second stage is now under power of the single
Those grid
Merlin
fins will
vacuum engine.
open. There they
You
go.
may have noticed some curved pieces of metal come off the end of the nozzle right after ignition. That's normal. These are ground
Both
handling
vehicles are
tubes.
following nominal trajectories.
They're not needed in flight. We hear the call out. We're following nominal trajectory. With the left side of your screen, you can see the first stage grid fins. The titanium grid fins have deployed. Coming up next, fairing separation.
Acquisition of signal, POMonkey.
Bearing separation confirmed.
A nice view from the second stage camera showing successful fairing deploy as Falcon 9 is passing through 110 kilometers altitude. Now we will be attempting to retrieve these new fairing halves with the help of our contracted recovery vessel, HOS Briarwood.
Just on that note, it's so amazing that they can recover those. Like, these are just basically two big bowl-ish fin, type things. Just float their way down.
Now currently Falcon 9 second stage heading northeast along the U.S. coast. We are sending telemetry down through the SpaceX Bermuda ground
Both
station.
vehicles continue to follow nominal
Now as we
trajectories.
pass 4 minutes and 20 seconds into flight, all systems are go
Acquisition of signal, Bermuda.
as Falcon 9 carries GPS into space.
Now we're going to wait. The booster will slowly make its way back in position. We're seeing a couple occasional little...
Plus 4 minutes and 45 seconds here into today's mission, and we're currently in the first of 2 planned MVAC burns for satellite deployment. You can see from the live views on your right, the second stage MVAC engine is burning, and there on your left is a live view of the Falcon 9 first stage as it's preparing to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere.
Those little bursts that we're seeing are the kind of RCS thrusters just helping push Falcon 9's booster into its orientation, getting itself ready for its entry burn to slow itself down and force it back in. Kind of like a deorbit burn, but it's not in an orbit at this point. But that'll bring it back down more precisely to where it needs to be. And then a couple minutes later, we're expecting it to do a landing burn as it touches down on, just read the instructions, about 647 kilometers downrange.
You can see a great live look at that Falcon 9 first stage there as it's coasting back down. Now, the Falcon 9 supporting today's mission will perform this entry burn for the second time, and both fairing halves will re-enter for the first time. This booster previously supported the November 2020 GPS-3 mission, and we're pretty excited to watch today's landing because it marks the first mission we're supporting for the U.S. Space Force with a flight-proven booster. Now, entry burn will start in just a few seconds here. Listen for the call out.
You can already see it.
Flight termination system is safe.
Stage 1, entry burn has started.
There it is. You can already see it starting to
You
come
heard the
down,
call
the
out,
Earth
and
getting
you can see
bigger.
on your screen, stage 1 entry burn has started. This burn lasts about 30 seconds.
And this is why we see the soot, because it's coming down really quickly and then it's burning.
Stage 1, entry burn, shut down.
You see more of the soot from the landing
We did have
burn.
a successful stage 1 entry burn there. And now while Falcon 9
Both
makes
vehicles continue to follow nominal trajectories.
While Falcon 9 makes its way back to Earth, you may notice that there are different soot markings on the outer covering of the rocket. You can maybe just see them on your screen on the left there. Now, if you've ever wondered how these markings are formed, the soot is generated when the carbon-based rocket-grade kerosene, or RP1, burns. And since our reentry occurs engines first, the booster flies through its own plume, which deposits the soot on the rocket there.
Hire me.
Now, coming up next will be our landing burn, which will be at T plus 8 minutes and 7 seconds. This will also last about 30 seconds, and it will hopefully land our first stage on our drone ship. Just read the instructions.
Stage 1 is transonic.
Off the Atlantic coast. You heard the call out that stage 1 is now transonic.
Stage 2 is entered terminal guidance.
We should see
Now,
that drone
just
ship.
1 second after the start of the landing burn, we will actually have second engine cut off.
Stage 2 flight termination system is safe.
On
There
the
it is.
second
There's,
stage on the right.
you
So
can
those
see the
coming up
drone
in
ship
just a
just
few
through the grid
seconds here.
fin,
Stage 1 landing burn has started.
steering itself towards it.
You can see that stage 1 entry burn.
Turn.
Seco 1.
There it
landing
is.
Burn.
There you go. Find the drone
And
ship.
Seco 1. There's the first stage coming in.
Look at that.
Landing legs are deployed.
Nominal parking orbit.
There we go.
Stage 1 landing confirmed.
What a beautiful,
Expected losses signals, SpaceX 2000.
what a beautiful view of that first stage landing. And we did get a confirmation from our second stage of a nominal orbit. You can hear the cheering in the background. Everyone's really excited. We did, again, have a confirmation of a nominal orbital insertion. And of course, we saw that beautiful landing of our Falcon 9 first stage on our drone ship, just to read the instructions. And there you have it. You've just witnessed Falcon 9's 19th landing for this year and SpaceX's 88th overall successful recovery of a first stage. And now at this time, our mission isn't over just yet. The second stage is now embarking on its first coast phase. Coasting in this orbit will last about 53 minutes, and then we'll relight that MVAC engine for a second time shortly after at T+1 hour and 2 minutes. We'll see you back here
Acquisition
at
signal, Newfoundland.
1 hour and 3 minutes.
And just like that, they are on their way. They just nail these things all the time. Some amazing views. They've definitely been able to keep their viewing, no loss of signal now during landing, which is always amazing. I love that they keep that booster shot. It makes some amazing time lapses. We will, of course, be releasing our launch, deployment, and landing recap in about 90-second video later today, most likely. But yeah, never get tired of seeing that, Michelle. Yeah, wow, OMG, absolutely. Just great. They had a beautiful clear day, too, which really helps. You can see that drone ship from quite a ways up as it comes down, but you can see how fast that thing's coming down. That's why there is no time to, if it misses, it misses for it. But we're going to hang out here. This is when we're expecting the second stage to get started here. If you have any questions, drop those in the chat, and I'll be answering those for a few minutes. And stuff. I do have some other things today, but we will, of course, keep this stream up, and I'll be answering the questions in the chat. But if you have them now, I'll answer them on stream, and then we'll be waiting for that second stage relight for a quick burn. It's about 45 seconds to finalize the orbit, because it's going into quite a high orbit here today. Final deployment orbit is over 20,000 kilometers by 20,000 kilometers, but thanks so much for everyone joining us. If you are signing off, don't forget to like and subscribe. But we will be live for the next about hour and 20 minutes as we await deployment of the GPS-3 Space Vehicle 5 satellite. Yeah.
GPS-3 Space Vehicle number 5 for the U.S. Space Force. We've had a nominal mission so far. Falcon 9 lifted off on time at 12:09 p.m. Eastern from Cape Canaveral Space Launch Complex 40. 2.5 minutes later, we separated our first and second stages. Now, the second stage completed its first burn, placing the Falcon 9 and the GPS into the desired parking orbit. As you can see from the timeline at the bottom of the screen, we're approaching the second burn of the MVAC engine, and that will carry Falcon 9 and GPS to the orbit needed to deploy the satellite. Now, the burn's coming up in about 20 seconds. Currently, Falcon 9 second stage, we're chilling in the engine, getting ready for ignition. We're settling propellants.
MVAC ignition.
And we've got ignition of the second stage engine. Niobium nozzle starting to glow red hot as normal. Now, this burn is planned to last 44 seconds. And during that time, we're going to add 2 kilometers per second to our velocity. You can see the gauge on the bottom right of the screen showing stage 2 is quickly gaining speed. That 2 kilometers per second will equal out to 7,000 kilometers per hour being added to our velocity. And this is going to change the orbit from a 400-kilometer apogee to one with a 20,000-kilometer apogee. Throttling down the engine, preparing for shutdown.
MVAC shutdown.
Okay, we've got shutdown. We're waiting to hear from the guidance officer.
Nominal orbit insertion.
And we've got a nominal orbit insertion. Now, as a reminder, the GPS satellite is still attached to Falcon 9's second stage. Payload deployment is timed to occur once the orbit takes us into range of one of the Space Force satellite ground stations, one in Hawaii, one in California. Once we reach this point, the Falcon 9 flight computer will command release of the GPS satellite. Now, currently, we're getting data through Tasmania, so it's going to take us about 25 minutes until the orbit climbs into sight of the ground stations. Satellite separation will then occur at approximately T+1 hour and 29 minutes. Now, while we wait for this next milestone, I have a short video from the satellite manufacturer Lockheed Martin. It'll highlight some of the new capabilities of the spacecraft. Take a look, and we'll see you back here at T+1 hour and 28 minutes for satellite separation.
the U.S. Space Force. If you're just joining us, we had an on-time launch at 12:09 p.m. Eastern, followed by a successful ascent, stage separation, first stage landing, and 2 second stage engine burns. We have just one more major milestone coming up to complete today's mission, which of course is the deployment of the GPS-3 satellite from Falcon 9's second stage, which will happen here in just under a minute at T+1 hour, 29 minutes, and 20 seconds. Currently, we are in view of the customer ground stations at Hawaii and California, which are necessary to reach prior to deployment. Now, in the 20 or so minutes since we've been coasting, we have increased quite a bit in altitude from our last burn, from about 420 kilometers now all the way up to over 4,000 kilometers. You can see those beautiful live views from our second stage. And let's listen in to hear that call out and watch for GPS-3 separation from our second stage here in just a few seconds.
Payload separation confirmed.
You can see in that beautiful video and heard the confirmation that we did have a successful payload deployment there. And for those watching, you are witnessing a successful deployment of the GPS-3 Space Vehicle 5. And with that successful deployment, that now brings our webcast to a close.
Great views from the camera on the second stage of Falcon 9 as we watch GPS-3, number 5, heading away from the vehicle. It's on its way to do its mission. We'd like to thank the U.S. Space Force for entrusting us with today's GPS-3 Space Vehicle 5 mission. SpaceX is one of 2 certified providers for national security space launch missions, and we're proud to be able to offer reliable, cost-effective launch services to the U.S. Space Force. We look forward to supporting the next GPS mission that's targeted for liftoff next year. Also, we send thanks this afternoon to the Space Force's Space Launch Delta 45 for range support. SpaceX will be observing Juneteenth this weekend, a historic holiday that commemorates the emancipation of those who had been enslaved in the United States. And we would also like to wish all the dads out there a happy Father's Day. Thanks for tuning in and have a great weekend.